I can't pay you.
That's okay. I just feel like fixing things.
So I've wanted to do a video on Once Upon a Time for a while. For those who don't know, it was this ABC fantasy series that ran for 7 seasons from 2011 until 2018, and believe me when I say it was the first show in years that I ever felt as attached to as my old favourites like Buffy, Charmed, Sabrina, and I guess Spartacus. I gave it a go in 2014 right before the 4th season started airing, binging the whole thing in about a month. I was a man obsessed who would not shut up about it for probably close to a year.
You are optimistic.
I recommended this show to everyone, and a season 4 episode even dropped while I was at the most boring house party in existence, so I got my laptop out and started watching it then and there. And then season 5 came along, with its dumpster fire of a Camelot arc. Yes, those air quotes are very much needed, and the show went in a direction so bad I felt personally violated. While I kept watching for the rest of season 5 and 6, and it wasn't nearly as horrific, it unfortunately didn't redeem itself for its final seasons like Charmed and Buffy, and talk about it can often just be variations of, hey, this was great, here's how they ruined it. So I'm going to talk about how my favourite character got the shaft. The basic premise of Season 1 is that the fairy tale characters we think we know have all been transported to a small town in our world with no memory of their pasts in the Enchanted Forest. Although they actually borrow from the Disney animated canon, since the mouse owns ABC, there's a strong emphasis on truer to the text. For example, Mulan shows up in Season 2, but she's actually closer to her counterpart in Chinese folklore as a proud woman who always wanted to become a warrior. But anyway, the evil queen from Snow White cast a curse that made her the mayor of Storybrooke, where she's the only one with her memories and everyone else is in a Groundhog Day loop until the arrival of one Emma Swan, the daughter of Snow White and Prince James / David / Charming, who was sent through a portal to grow up in our world just as the Dark Curse was cast. She's brought to the town by her long-lost son that she gave up for adoption at birth, because she's destined to be the savior who breaks the curse. That won't be easy, what with her being 28 and a closed-off loner who doesn't believe in hope, as well as her son's stepmother being the evil queen. I forgot how mad it was to recap this show back in the day. 9 episodes into Season 1, after a heart-wrenchingly emotional Hansel and Gretel retelling, a man on a motorbike drives into Storybrooke, which is a very big deal according to Henry.
I thought you said strangers don't come to Storybrooke.
They don't.
He goes by The Stranger for 3 episodes for no apparent reason, for giving his name as August W. Booth.
Really? With the middle initial?
He's also the only other person who seems to believe Henry's theory about everyone in Storybrooke, and it looks like he's here to put Emma on the path to believing in magic so she can break the Dark Curse. Putting 2 and 2 together, viewers will figure out that for him to know so much, he must be someone from the Enchanted Forest, but also not a victim of the Dark Curse, since he was able to leave town. We spend an episode believing that he might actually be Rumpelstiltskin's son Balefire, who went through a portal to a land without magic and became the whole reason the Dark Curse came about, but then we find out that he was actually none other than Pinocchio, who was sent through the same portal as Emma to serve as her guide and take care of her until the time came for her to break the curse. But whoops, he didn't, and abandoned her while she was still a baby to look out for himself.
I was supposed to be there for you.
Now that the time to break the curse is running out, his body is slowly turning back to wood, and he'll become a puppet again if Emma doesn't make with the belief.
You're our only hope.
Then you're all screwed.
He's only a regular for Season 1, and is unceremoniously dumped in Season 2 in one of many head-wrecking decisions made by the writers in the sophomore year. He appears in only 3 episodes, 2 of which are just cameos in the same flashback. And then in the episode Selfless, Brave and True, they do resolve his redemption arc by restoring him to his child self in a move that left me wondering, wow, who did Ian Bailey piss off? The answer appears to be no one with real power, because they age Pinocchio back up in Season 4 and don't revert him, which is nice fan service, but I can't say it completely removed all my grievances with this character, so let's get to it. August is unfortunately a victim of being made far too interesting by writers who didn't seem invested in realizing his full potential. Let's recap exactly what this dude's backstory is. He's a fairy tale character, and one who only became human thanks to a powerful sacrifice that allowed the magic to work.
Be brave, truthful, and unselfish. So long as you do that, you will always remain a real boy.
As a child, he was very moral and selfless, even being willing to risk his humanity so that Snow White and Emma could be together in the land without magic. But then he was put in a position by his father where he had to save himself at the expense of someone else's happiness, and then entrusted to take care of someone else for 28 years until she could reunite them.
You must look out for the child in this new land. You must protect her.
Understandably, this literal child buckles under that pressure and abandons Emma to escape an abusive foster home. He then spends the next 3 decades doing goodness knows what, with the knowledge that magic exists, and his family is trapped in an enchanted town somewhere in Maine. When the person he was supposed to be there for starts pursuing her destiny, he starts turning back to Wood and faces certain death if he doesn't step it up like he should have done all those years ago and help her achieve the rest. He also carries the guilt of not living up to the mission his father gave him, which the show acknowledges was far too much to expect of a scared child.
I don't think I became the man he wanted me to be.
This dude deserved way more than half a season of screen time and a handful of guest appearances later. I mean, David's story reached its resolution around season 4 or so, and so did Snow's. Thus they had to keep contriving ways to keep them in the plot. This sometimes worked with Snow, but otherwise they'd gone through their character development and didn't serve the story to justify staying around as regulars. And arguably Emma's story seemed to reach its conclusion by season 4 as well, and although the Dark Swan arc had potential, it ultimately felt pointless overall. Hook 2 became superfluous by, you guessed it, season 4, as did Henry, but these characters were kept around because of familiarity or inertia, while also taking time away from more interesting regulars like Regina, Zelina, and Belle. Not to mention the back catalogue of umpteen supporting characters who got the shaft, but what happened with August was almost foreshadowing for the rest. The first reason that August deserved to be more than just a recurring guest star is that he was tied to the show's central premise from the start.
I was gonna get the Savior to believe.
The conflict of the first season is getting Emma to believe in magic so she can break the curse. She can't believe for the longest time because she had an extremely rough childhood and had to grow up very fast without a family. Why did that happen? Because Geppetto sent his son through the magic wardrobe instead of letting Snow White go with her daughter. And because August abandoned her while she was still a baby, Emma grew up without that guidance and encouragement that now falls to her 10-year-old to try and prize out of her.
You know what to do?
Operation Cobra is always ready.
August is linked to Emma's story from the beginning. Yeah, there are some characters who were regulars initially but naturally fell more towards the recurring role, such as Archie, but August was not one of these. His presence in season 1 was extremely important in the arc's progression.
I don't understand what this has to do with getting Emma to believe.
Besides what he does for Emma, he validates Henry's belief that the curse is real, helps reveal that the reason for the Dark Curse existing is Rumpel's desire to reunite with his son, and is one of the few characters with both extensive knowledge of the Enchanted Forest and land without magic. He also adds a ticking clock to the proceedings, since Emma's gotta believe in magic stat or he ain't gonna be getting the good kind of wood, and I hope I'm not the only one that guessed he was supposed to be more for Emma than just her good friend. I think Once Upon a Time might have set some kind of record for how many love interests they gave Emma and each of their inability to be more believable than all these characters she had accidental chemistry with. I was not a Swan Queen shipper as they call it, mainly because I actually liked Regina with Robin Hood. Now there's another dude who got done dirty. But it's not there. Emma and Lily? Holy cow.
You're part of my cover now. So what do you say?
But you cannot convince me that August was not meant to be a love interest with scenes like this.
Do you want me to get you drunk?
No.
Next time.
He shows up right after the death of love interest number 1, who likewise was tied to helping Emma believe in magic. And writing a love interest is hard, especially for a female empowerment show. The man who claims the heart of a strong, independent woman has to offer something important besides attractiveness, since the writing tells us she don't need no man. Robin Hood was the perfect match for Regina because he was a commoner like her first love Daniel, and that coupled with his independence and lack of familiarity with her meant that he saw through her walls and allowed her to be vulnerable with him.
It's your majesty, and I'm fine.
A simple thank you would suffice.
David was the perfect match for Snow because, as a shepherd boy passed off as a prince, he had no experience with duty and wouldn't compromise his own feelings for the sake of a kingdom he doesn't care about. And the show is so focused on the idea of true love and epic romance that the two love interests they gave Emma after Graham died did not cut it for me.
Maybe it was fate.
I feel when talking about this dude, I have to say both Neal and Balefire because they're two different characters and two different stories that got smushed together.
Faye.
To clarify, the worst twist in Season 2 that nearly made me drop the show then and there was that Rumpel's missing son turns out to also be Emma's ex and Henry's father.
Is this my son?
Those are two different storylines that shouldn't have been given to the one character. Michael Raymond James is fine as the doofy freeloader who got Emma pregnant and then abandoned her. He is unfortunately absolutely unsuited for the melodrama that's required for traumatized morality pet to evil being. You know who is suited to that role? Ian Bailey, who was given the shaft before this played out in front of us.
I forgive you, Papa.
Neal worked as a romantic false lead who served as a bad memory from Emma's past, not a potential endgame lover.
Why do you wear the keychain I got you?
I really wanted to like Neal/Bay, but because of the overload and backstory and neither one being played to their full extent, he couldn't live up to the hype. But if you think I hate him as a love interest, just wait till I get to the actual endgame. I could do a whole dissertation on why Hook and Emma were a terrible couple, but I'm talking about August here, so I'll summarize. I liked Hook when he first showed up. Colin O'Donoghue was perfect as the Spike-like bad boy who has some fun sexual tension with our heroine and just enough sympathy to be entertaining.
I may be a pirate, but I bristle at the thought of a woman losing her heart. That's so with me.
I was fine with the face turn, even if it did require you to forget a lot of his worst actions. But then Season 4 starts deciding to push them as this epic true love, and I just soured on the pairing and the character completely.
It's you.
And I think I sided with Hook in the love triangle only because it meant Emma wouldn't be forced with Neal. But besides the levels of gross about being in a love triangle with your dead lover's son, it's hard to see what this pairing does for either character and what they're getting out of this romance. And since I referenced Spike earlier, I'm going to go there with the comparisons.
Every night I save you.
While the romance with Buffy was destructive and built on a stalker's crush at first, the reason the pairing kinda sorta works for me is in how Spike differs from Buffy's previous love interests. Angel would often make decisions for Buffy and go behind her back out of a desire to protect her, but also backhandedly infantilizing her since he was a centuries-old adult and she was 17. Riley likewise couldn't handle not being the stronger partner and the power imbalance. Spike, having been her enemy beforehand, was the only one of her three love interests that ever saw her as an equal. So back to Emma/August.
How about you stop having to control everything and take a leap of faith?
It's very obvious when rewatching Season 1 that these two were written to be love interests, because each fulfills a need for the other that ties into the central theme of the main story.
This is my story, and it's your story.
Emma, as an orphan in the uniquest situation imaginable, does not have her abandonment issue solved when the curse breaks.
No matter what the circumstances, for 28 years, I only knew one thing. That my parents sent me away.
August is the only one who understands what that was like, having also been separated from his family for the greater good, and having to grow up as a stranger to the entire world.
That's my business.
For the reverse, Emma is someone who is in a situation like August, where they were victims of circumstance and made a lot of bad choices, both of which coincidentally involve giving up a baby. Emma's story with Henry shows August that it's not too late to try and make amends to someone you were supposed to be there for, and the importance of forgiving yourself for past mistakes. The two are connected from the beginning, and there's material here that feels like it was part of a story that just got dumped. And that's part of the reason both Neal and Hook feel so contrived as love interests, since the writers had already kicked August to the curb and then had to create connections out of whole cloth to justify it.
I know how to plan a date.
You know how to chase a monster. I know how to plan an evening out.
Emma was never an ice queen that knew nothing about love. She connected with guys no problem, even after Neal broke her heart.
To dinner, or something.
Shouldn't I be the one asking you, Ab?
Hook as this sweep-you-off-your-feet traditional romantic? His first episode was all about how he stole another man's wife, who he also publicly humiliated for being weak. And he also once made this joke while trying to kill Emma.
I prefer to do other more enjoyable activities with a woman on her back.
Neither of these guys were endgame for Emma, and they kept trying to make it make sense, when all they had to do was a little soap opera rapid aging syndrome on August here.
I'm not gonna lose Killian.
I stand by my opinion that Emma and Hook was forced so much because Captain Swan was the only ship that came close to rivaling Swan Queen in popularity, and you can really see them trying to undo it in Season 4, making Emma and August out to be platonic in the hopes that it will retcon away these moments.
I thought you came here to write and find inspiration.
I'm optimistic about our date.
Seriously, most moments of Hook romancing Emma are just recycled August scenes. And if the ghastly Season 5 plot twist of Hook becoming a second Dark One contributed anything of value, it's confirming that Colin O'Donoghue was best suited to playing a villain.
We have a son, and he needs his mother. You see, I have a ship full of men who need companionship.
Jennifer Morrison has more chemistry with Ian Bailey in half a season than these lengthy scenes involving fake-out deaths, weddings, and babies. And although this whole rant may say otherwise, I'm not actually a crazy Emma August shipper. I don't even know what that ship is called. Swanwood? The final reason I feel August got shafted comes next. Going back to my earlier statements on how Once Upon a Time was really a truer to the text interpretation of these fairy tales and other classic stories, August's story was indeed this for Pinocchio.
It sure is.
The Disney-fied version was a good kid who got led astray because of naivety or bad influences, but his on-page counterpart was actually a bit of a brat. He was a cheeky, disobedient child who knew right from wrong much clearer than the Disney version, and still chose wrong a lot of the time. Pinocchio is actually one of the ultimate redemption stories. And while the central theme of Once Upon a Time was mainly that good triumphs over evil, the other huge one is that everybody deserves a second chance. Emma gave her son up for adoption because she didn't think she could be a mother, and now she gets the chance to do it over again when she sees how Henry is under Regina's control. The show's take on Cinderella even repurposes her as someone who agreed to trade her firstborn to get a better life, but now wants to give it all up to keep her baby after all. But that kind of redemption is the easy variety, where the characters made tough decisions but did the right thing before any lasting damage could be done. August's story, on the other hand, asks some very uncomfortable questions.
By the time I got around to making good on it, I think it was too late.
He's a guy who messed up royally, in a way that could have affected hundreds of people. Emma, after all, was a tool of Rumpelstiltskin to ensure his reunion with Bay. August abandoning Emma as a child wasn't necessarily part of the plan. And while you could argue that his efforts at making it up were a bit too little too late, the show itself makes a point that the effort being made at all is what counts.
You realize your mistake and you try to fix. That's important.
Because one does good not in the hopes of getting results, but because it's the right thing to do. August was the first main character to come back from rock bottom and have to put in the work to do so, indicating that it would be possible for Regina, Rumpel, and eventually Zelina too. And the way his arc gets resolved just goes against what made the show work for me.
So sorry, Mama.
Oh, there's nothing to apologize for.
Despite the fairy tale framework, Once Upon a Time in its early seasons made a point that neat happy endings aren't always possible.
But if we hadn't sent you away, you would have been cursed too. But we would have been together.
Emma can't get back the 28 years she spent without a family. Henry can't get back the 10 years he spent with an abusive mother. And Regina can't get Daniel back. But they're able to find ways to live with what they do have and make the most of that. August deserved the chance to properly earn his redemption the way Regina did, and live with the results. Both the memory of his past mistakes, but also the knowledge that he did the right thing in the end.
If I had a son, that would be enough for me.
Resetting him to a child with no memories of everything else, and only bringing him back to serve as an exposition giver or plot device feels like anything but a happy ending. It also allows Geppetto to conveniently dodge consequences of forcing Emma to be separated from her parents so he could be sure about his own son.
You just made a mistake. I would have done the same thing for my child.
I guess for me, I prefer it when the second chance still requires me to remember all the reasons why the first one went wrong.
The body has a strange way of sending us signals, doesn't it? The tricky part isn't hearing them, but knowing what they truly mean.
I find myself reflecting a lot on my first watch of this series and what it really meant to me. Maybe August's story resonated with me so much because of the second chance nature of it all, and how a man in his mid-30s could still turn his life around. Meaning it definitely wasn't too late for me to go after what I really wanted in life. And in connection with that, Ian Bailey's performance hit me in the feels so much I had to check out more of his work, which led to me watching Band of Brothers, and ultimately realizing I couldn't ignore my dreams any longer. I even had a documentary about me named after a quote I started using based on what he said on Twitter. So you can probably guess that I'm a little bit biased when it comes to this character. Okay, a lot biased. But regardless of how little August got to be part of this 7-season roller coaster, he still made an impact on me, and that's worth celebrating.
Come in. Bien, bien.